I really appreciate y'all letting me come and present this today. It's something that's been in works for many years. I picked up on it about 5 years ago to run with it. It's the way I get to nerd out a little bit, research, and learn a little bit more about uh, my lodge, our uh, Pro Lodge 23, and the effects and the connections it's had on not only our state but our nation, because how long it's been around and the influence it's had. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, awesome. Here we go. So the records of Pearl Lodge 23 and Ohio Freemasonry. This dog, he's over here sleeping. I figured he would be. That's him right there. He goes wherever I go. He's awesome, awesome sidekick. So usually he'd be snooping around, but he's behind me snoring. So just a little bit about myself. I'm from Pearl, Mississippi. I served in the uh, Air Force from '04 to 15. When I got back, I got my degree in political science and history from Mississippi College, and then I'm our lead drone pilot as well. Um, so I get to do that. So most days kind of fun. A little bit about my Masonic history. Uh, I've been in Freemasonry since 2017 under the Grand Lodge of Mississippi. I'm a past master of John P. Byrd in Pearl, Mississippi, Pearl 23 in Jackson, and current master of Mississippi Lodge of Research. Um, One of my passions is history and research. I tell folks there's a place masonry. You got the guys that sure, and I'm thankful for those guys and get the meanings out of it. But in 2020, I was able to um, present a bylaw change and actually get it to our Mississippi Canal digitize their Masonic records. Before then, it was not allowed. So now we can start digitizing our history to preserve it for generations to come. 300, 200 years down the road. So I'm love that we're able to do that now. So jumping into Pearl Lodge 23, just to give y'all a little bit of history, and the picture behind me, my green screen, that is the lodge room of Pearl 23, facing the east there. So, but I'll have some better pictures here as we go. Um, so I came into Freemasonry, not really knowing my place or where I wanted to do. And like I said, my mother lodge is John P. Byrd in Pearl, but I went and visited Pearl 23, and when you walk into this building, you're walking 100 years back in time, and that's just excited me to see that. I was like a kid in a candy store, so I ended up dueling with them, and but they were chartered in February of 1835 in Jackson. Interesting how we got where we're at. We're in the City Hall building of Jackson. In 1839, the legislation gave us a plot of land when they were doing it out. They were doing a grid pattern for Jackson. They gave us a plot of land. By 1844, we hadn't started building on it, so the mayor and board of aldermen came to us and asked if they could put City Hall there because it was near where the Capitol sat at that time. The lodge and the city made an agreement that they could build City Hall, but Pearl 23 would build the top floor, and that they would be there permanently. That would be their spot. The original City Hall was built in 1846, but due to foundation issues, it had to be torn down. And it rebuilt in 1854. So we've been in the same meeting room since 1854. for a lodge. And so when you walk in, it's a feeling like no other, going back in time and history. So, and just a little side blurb I put at the bottom. The city of Jackson has tried to kick us out a couple of times, because when you go to the third floor, when you get off the elevator, you make a right into uh, the lodge room. And if you go left, you go into the mayor of Jackson's office. So I mean, they're right across the hallway from each other. So is into our lodge there, and his brothers has kind of helped shape our nation and state that have ties to Pearl. 23. The first one's Brother James Smith. And if there's any questions, y'all stop me. If I go too fast, just holler at me. So I'll definitely. Brother James Smith, he's an interesting brother there. He came to America from Scotland. He was master of Pearl 23 in 1845 and 1851. He actually made his money selling wood burning stoves in downtown Jackson. Wood burning stoves that they say that he was not counterfeiting, but he had taken a design. Uh, Funny history there for that, but he in 1883 he gave $100 to get a park repaired in Jackson. And then when he died, they named that park after him, Smith Park. Um, it's one of the oldest parks in America. It's older than Central Park in New York City. And what's another significance about this park that's tied into masonry, not only for Mississippi, but for, across the U.S., is this is also a park where there's a monument for Brother Rob Morris, the founder of the Eastern Star. Um, and this monument marks where the first degrees were performed, um, which was right across the street from where he lived at a time while he was in Jackson. And this here you can see Smith Park here, and you can see the Eastern Star monument that's set up there. Not the best part of town anymore, so it doesn't get the love that it needs, but kind of a neat tie-in to the lodge and its significance within the community. When Brother Jackson was traveling from Tennessee to New Orleans for the 25th anniversary of the Battle of New Orleans, when he come back, they the mayor at the time asked him to stop in for a celebration in his name, since the city was named after him. But after the festivals were over, they shot cannons off, had a party for him, whatever it may be. He came over to the lodge, and he was made an honorary member. We actually just found this information in bits and pieces in other books while I was researching. Actually came across it by accident in a book that we found in the lodge that was released back in the early 1900s. So we have significant history that we just don't know about, because we have lost record books, which is what the presentation is on, coming up on. So here's where we're at, the war and our lost records, and the War of Northern Aggression, or I think y'all call it the Civil War up there, maybe. Just kidding. So the Civil War, y'all know 1861 to 65. So during the war, Jackson was burned 3 times, earning it the nickname Chimneyville. Every time Union forces came through, it got burned. Well, City Hall and the Capitol building and the governor's mansion were all spared from being burned during that time. And City Hall was used as a hospital and command post for both the North and the South during the war. Many people, rumor has it, urban legends say, the reason why it wasn't burned was because of the lodge in it. I'd hope that would be, a reason when brothers come through not to burn a lodge like that. But we were spared. But during that time too, we believe that the secretary at the time grabbed the minute book that they were currently in and took it with him to protect it and to have it. So if they needed to meet elsewhere, they would have it. And so that's why we have minute books just prior to the Civil War and then through the Civil War, still in our records. In those minute books that we have, there was actually only 2 mentions of the war taking place, which I thought was very interesting. I figured we would get more writings about it. But the two inserts we got was the first that was saying that the lodge was unable to meet for a year due to Union occupation in Jackson. And the second was all the records prior to that book had been taken during the war or during the Union occupation. So that I thought that was kind of interesting. It never mentioned anything else that happened coming through. No perspective. So it's interesting how that happened. So again, that was just moving into now Pearl Lodge 23 prior to 1920 and to today. Again, City Hall inside the lodge there. It's a beautiful lodge. I wish we could actually restore it more. Some of that history that ties into it again, post-war. During Reconstruction, the leaders of Mississippi were worried about the vital records of the state being destroyed after the war. And most of y'all, if y'all studied Civil War, the South was put into districts. You had it was like military districts. You had government or generals over them type thing. So they were worried that these stuff was going to be destroyed during that time. So when the war ended, they actually approached the lodge and said, "Hey, can we hide the records in the lodge?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So they were there for over 3 decades before hidden until the Department of Archives and History was created in the early 1900s, 1902, 1903. So which is kind of significant when you're looking at the previous pictures before. The lodge would have looked like this during that time with no balconies, nothing like that. So we don't have any records of where they were hidden. And it's kind of hard to find since the lodge was remodeled to look like this after the 1920s, after they were pulled out of the wall and turned over. But significance to that. So one of our past masters at the time, he was one of only 2 people that knew where they were. So once Mississippi Department of Archives and History was created, he reached out to them, gave them to them. And these records were vital for a lot of members or a lot of veterans in Mississippi, because at this point, up to that point, they were not able to get veteran benefits, veteran rights, because there was no proof of them being in the military during the war. And so this actually proved that they were in the war and played a significant role in that. So here's where we get into our lost records. So we're missing all our records from 1835 to 1856. During that time of it too, as we talked about, the lodge wasn't where it's at today. It was at another location. We don't know the exact location, but we got a kind of general area where it was. But a lot of history took place from that 1835 to 1856, with past presidents joining, with building the new lodge, relocating the deals with the city and everything. So that's really our main goal, is trying to find that history to bring it back home. Um, so while I was doing research and preserving some old history, we got one of our current members, Brother Bob Crichelle. His grandfather was a Grand Master back in 1965. Well, he started bringing us a lot of records that his grandfather had in a box, and he said, "Here, I want to donate them. Y'all preserve them." So started working on that project, and I sat down one day with Brother Bob, and we were talking. He said, "Hey, funny story." He said, "I don't know if there's any legitimacy to it." He said, I don't know the full details of it." He said, "But the story I got from my grandfather was when he was Grandmaster, he was at the Grandmasters Conference of Grandmasters, and he was approached by a member of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, telling him that they had found some of our old records that dated back prior to the Civil War." Um, he said his grandfather didn't know the name, didn't know who, didn't tell him who it was. He said, but the grand officer or his grandfather said, when he was telling the story, that he said, "Hey, the grand officer told me to contact him when we got back, and they'd make arrangements to get them returned." This was 1965. A lot was going on in our country, especially with the South, the race relations, the civil rights. Communication wasn't as easy as it is today. And I actually found this in one of Ohio's Grand Lodge communications. And, it even talks about the Grand Master of Texas was there, and the Grand Master, and it's talking about the Mississippi Masonry. And, during the 60s, the Mississippi didn't recognize New York and New Jersey, and vice versa, due to civil rights and everything. And so, unfortunately, Mississippi wasn't looked upon favorably a lot during that time. And so communication was not only harder, because you couldn't just pick up a phone and make a call to Ohio as easy as it is today, but two, many of them didn't really care to communicate with us at that time, I should say. So, that the finding the records kind of went to the wayside during that. So, but once I received this information, I did start researching. I found that there's a Ohio regiment during the Civil War was the 72nd Ohio Infantry Regiment. They came through Jackson during the siege of Jackson in 1863. This would have, and as we said before, this would have been the same time period that we had in our lodge book, that the lodge was shut down for a year. The lodge was the infantry regiment is from Fremont, Ohio, chartered just after the Civil War. So that was the first unit I started looking in, and then in 2019, I sent out an email to all the lodges that had an email listed online asking for help. I don't know if any of y'all were secretaries at the time or may have remembered that, but I shot that out. And on that research, I met Brother Chad Simpson and Brother Charlie. And I will say that, little side note with Brother Chad, he is a Mason's Mason. I don't know if any of y'all know him or have any connections with him. A funny little side story with him. So I sent these emails out, and I get a text message one morning on the way to work about 7:30, and it says, "Hey, this is Brother Chad. I'm from Ohio." So he said, "Can I call you? Can you talk?" I said, "Yeah, I'm on my way to work. Give me a call." And so I answered the phone, and he goes, "This is Brother Chad. I got your email." I said, "Okay, good." I said, I said, do you know any information or anything to help? He said, well, first off, did why are you just reaching out to Grand Lodge, Ohio like that, not going through the channels? And I was like, whoa. I said, I did. I said, I talked to my Grand Lodge. They told me to call your Grand Lodge. I said, I called and talked to a sweet lady at the Ohio Grand Lodge, and she told me it was okay. He was like, okay. And he said, well, tell me what you got before we go on a wild goose chase. So I went through and I broke down what I had and what I was looking for and what I had found and the connections. And he stopped a minute and he said, well, I guess you've done your homework. I said, yes, sir, I hope so. And he's like, all right, well, let's see if we can help you. So I tell you, I was a little nervous there at first, but I tell you, he was great. Talking to him, and then also Brother Charlie, I still talk to him several times a year. I believe he's a DDGL for, or I'm not sure what y'all call him. It's District Deputy Grand Lecturers for us. I'm not sure what Ohio, but I believe he's equivalent to that in Ohio still. Um, Great guy, both of them. Really enjoyed meeting them and lifelong friends there. But yeah, Brother Chad mentioned that the Grand Lodge was actually moving, if I remember right, and he was going to look as he was able. So then that brings us to 2023. Listening to the Historical Light Masonic podcasts. If you've never listened to it, just a shout out to them. They are phenomenal. I love it. They do great content on it. But that's where I met Brother Chad here. He was a guest on the show, talking about the history of Ohio Freemasonry. Let's see. So I reached out to them, reached out to Brother Chad asking for his help. And he jumped right on it. And I really appreciate that. He called in some of his best resources and some of the stuff that was pointed out and found, was that the one of the next regiments I looked at was the 53 Ohio Regiment, was also in Jackson during the war. They were here in May of 63 and February of 64. The 53 Regiment was organized at Camp Diamond in Jackson, Ohio. That's Trial Lodge 132 in Jackson, Ohio on Pearl Street, chartered in October of 1845. And also found that the Grand Master of the time, Most Worshipful Brother Ben Evans, was present at the Grand Master's convention when the story took place, and he was from Jackson, Ohio. I'm not one to believe in coincidence. I'm not one to believe things just happen because. So, and I'll tell you, I got kind of chills when I started doing this research on the 53rd because Jackson, Ohio, and Jackson, Mississippi, both the same cities where the lodges are. And the lodge itself is on Pearl Street, which is the same as the lodge as Pearl Lodge 23. And also the Grand Master at the time, Most Worshipful Brother Evans, being from Jackson, Ohio, that hit me with the coincidence, and I'm not a coincidence kind of guy. I believe everything happens for a reason and not by chance. So gave me chills on that one. So I'm hoping that's a good sign that we've narrowed it down, but we'll see as time goes, I guess. But the next unit was pointed out that looked at was the 68th Ohio Infantry Regiment. It was out of Napoleon, Ohio, chartered in 1865. They were in Jackson for the least amount of time of the regiments. They were only in Jackson for about 2 days in 1863 during the siege of Jackson, and then they moved on to other areas where they were needed. So I don't know how much time they would have spent around or near the lodge. Um, and then and so on the next topic here is where I'm hoping this will help us or help the two Grand Lodges here, find the history and but I just put it, brothers, I need y'all's help looking in lodge rooms, closets, safes. There's so much history that we know has taken place and we know that's happened with Pearl Lodge 23, but we don't have those written records to really tell our story. Like I said, this has been my mission the last 5 years to find those records. And so I'm hoping that's something that doing this presentation, doing this, reaching out, to get help. And, I'm still researching. I think I was adding stuff to this and changing stuff on this for, up until I think last week on this presentation, just finding new information and finding new stuff to add in. That's about the end of my presentation on how the two tie together, or how we believe the two tied together. And like I said, I want to thank y'all again for letting me speak, letting me come on and share this information and this research that we've done. Truly an honor to speak in front of the Ohio Lodge of Research. And then the last thing I have is, anybody have any questions or anything to add? I'll try to answer as much as I can. Or
not as much of a question, but I have to voice a regret. I was there, but I got my Master Mason, and then COVID hit very shortly
yeah,
thereafter. I don't know that I've ever actually been in Pearl Lodge
really,
in City Hall. Yeah,
really.
I knew that it was in City Hall, and I've seen the monument in the park that you showed us the picture of. I've been to that one, but I don't know that I've ever actually been inside of the lodge room there, and I'm gonna have to probably rectify that at some point in the future.
Come on down, brother. I will take you on a personal tour of the lodge room. So,
Hi, Brother Watkins. Good to see you again. Um, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't say, while you're in
it's good
Dayton,
seeing you, brother.
if only we could convince you to drive about 3 hours east and, get you to come down to, I can get you to talk to Jordan Pickens and get you to get down in this neck of the woods. And maybe, we can let you root around some of the lodges down here. Because if we think it's down in,
Okay.
if it's down, really about 10 miles that way from where I'm sitting, may as well get you in with Jordan and may as well see what we can, figure out, if anything. But if all else
That's
fails,
awesome.
at least you can come down and see what Jackson's all about. So,
Okay. I appreciate that. I'll definitely be in touch with you and try to coordinate that.
A few of us on here, Brother Kapinski and myself especially, have talked on multiple occasions about how much masonry is about connections. So it's intriguing to me to see this connection that goes back to 150 years or more to between the two Grand Lodges, and then the irony of having Brother Richardson here, and as well as Brother Watkins, and that similar connection in this modern time. So you obviously shared, your connection, the information you found about the regiments and so forth. Is there anything else you've found, anything else you've looked into as far as like personal communications, maybe of the Grand Masters of that time, or is there any ability to access that kind of information that might help?
So, some of the information or some of the stuff I've gotten from Brother Bob Chriselle from his grandfather is a lot of correspondence between him and some of the other Grand Lodges around the U.S. I hadn't come across anything yet between the two. I've gone back looking through both Grand Lodge communications for Mississippi and Ohio, trying to see if there was anything mentioned a few years a year or two before, a year or two after that date. Looked at other Grand Lodges that may have been in attendance at the Ohio Grand Lodge that went back and gave reports. Really didn't get a whole lot. I will say that the I believe it was 1964 Ohio proceedings. Somebody did a breakdown of the Ohio regiments during the Civil War and stuff, and that was phenomenal information to research. And if you've not seen it, it's a great read. It talks about the military lodges and where a lot of the regiments came from and the lodges they were a part of. I did find a roll of the 70, what did I say, the 73rd Regiment. That was, I apologize, there's so many, or the 72nd Regiment. I found a roll of their members, and a lot of them had their grave sites or family trees with it. So there's several in that are Masons, and I'm going through doing the same now with the 53rd Ohio Regiment. And like I said, that with all the connections on the 53rd, I think that's where I'm going to consider or concentrate my focus on to see what rabbit hole that leads me down for a little while, because there's just so many connections there and so many coincidences there that I would hate to ignore it and it be the bread trail I'm looking for.
This sounds strange, but like what for you is sort of the next milestone, the next, is it finding the next clue? Is it just kind of like at this point you're just kind of casting a wide net and hoping for the best? Like what's
I'm hoping the next clue. I've really enjoyed the breadcrumbs following it to the next clue. It was, hey, finding out, all right, our records are missing. And then talking to a grandson of a past grandmaster that had a conversation about them. And then, going from there and finding the regiments that came through Jackson and then putting it out to y'all and finding that information that y'all had that I didn't know existed. Like I talked about, even, some of those records talk about, like I said, Andrew Jackson coming through. Well, I reached out to to his home museum in Nashville, Tennessee, asking, hey, do y'all have any information about him coming through Jackson and visiting a Masonic lodge? And they were like, no, we had no clue. We have no record of that. Like, he didn't. There's no writings he really did of that they have or know of. And they were even asking, hey, can you send us that information? Dots. The book I found said, hey, he made an honorary member on this date. And then I pulled newspaper articles that proved that he was here in Jackson. So I just like those, finding that next clue, finding the next piece that's going to take me, to narrow it down even more. Because there's so much history out there that it's hard to put in all one place. So it's I guess the thrill of the hunt.
So, brother, you kind of addressed this in that answer, but one of the, I'm going to say, unofficial missions of the Ohio Lodge of Research is helping people learn how to do research. What we're finding is we have a lot of Masons who are not from an academic background, so to speak, and they want to do research. They're interested in doing research, but they don't really know how to go about it. I was curious if you could kind of go through some of your process and just, how do you find these clues? What resources do you go to? What sources do you try to find? Anything you're able to share there would be interesting.
I'll tell you the biggest resource that I've found is it's a website. It's called newspaper.com. You can go down, you can search, and I'll tell you that's where you're gonna. To me, that's where I found the best firsthand or secondhand knowledge of an event is from the newspaper. They're gonna print it. They printed them and I love reading the older newspapers because it's not like what you see today. They put better information. There was no spin on it. It was, hey, here's what happened, because, and I hate you back to Andrew Jackson, but that was one of the bigger ones I found is a lot of people either loved Andrew Jackson or hated him. Well, they just put in there, hey, a former president came through. We shot off cannons. We had a big feast. He come out, spoke. And that's what it told on that side of the story. It didn't tell about the Masonic side. And then that's where I found is the newspaper, and then finding something that can back that up so you can use it as facts type thing. And I tell you a lot of the older books, finding older books about, I found older books about Jackson, about Mississippi that I've been able to go through and find information in it that you don't normally see in today's history books or, today's Wikipedia searches on the city. It was somebody's view, somebody's experience of that time. And it's actually been able to help me move my research along a little better.
Yeah, we recently had a presentation by Brother Chris Ruley, who wrote a book on the White House and Freemasons. And it's interesting. I asked him a similar question, and he came up with the same answer, which was how important newspaper.com was, and going through all of those old articles and so forth. So very interesting. Yeah.
It's an amazing resource out there, and the newspapers go back to the 1700s that you can look at and read and research. So
yeah. And I think one of the exciting things about your research is there's an end point, right? If you find these records, you're done. You know what you know why you were here. Chad, did you have another question?
I was going to say that in the stuff that I'm doing, newspapers.com has been really helpful. What's also been interesting sometimes is recognizing the holes that are there. It's amazing what you learn from what's there. Then you also recognize, like, wait, there should be something here. Why isn't there something here? And sometimes finding those voids is almost just as interesting and important and illuminating as finding the answer. Would you agree with that, Brother Watkins?
Oh yes, definitely. And like I said, it's the, and as Brother David said, there is an end point, and I would love to be able one day to have the two Grand Lodges come together and to get the records back for that. But at the same time, the hunt, the finding the history, the finding the things that were lost and lost in time, finding those and bringing it back is also just as amazing for me. Now, I know there's some people that want to find the records and that's my end goal, but finding that history along the way just what excites me. So
excellent. Well, maybe we should unofficially put that on our calendars that when these records are found, we'll have an official joint meeting of the Ohio Lodges, or the Lodges of Research from Ohio and Mississippi.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Very good. Very good. Well, Brother Watkins, this has been very interesting. It's interesting to see, how you've put all the pieces together and made the connections between the lodges as well as the history of what was it, the Northern aggression. And really appreciate you coming to share the story with us. It's been very helpful, very, very enjoyable. with that, I will, on behalf of the Ohio Lodge of Research, just give you a formal thank you for sharing your time, sharing your information. And as always, if there's anything else we can do to help you, if you just reach out and we'll do what we can as far as